Hi there, it's Bruce Bishop, and welcome to Go Right Ahead, my occasional podcast with freelance writers and independent authors and others who are very involved with the current publishing industry. Today, I'm very happy to have donalee Moulton with me. Donalee is a Halifax-based writer, journalist, author, educator, communicator. She's around town, and we all know her very well in the community in Halifax. So let me just tell you a little bit about donalee. I don't want to mix up any of the facts, and I'm going to read off a little biography here. Her work has appeared in over 100 publications across North America, including Canadian Business, Chatelaine, Equinox, Ford Times, Maclean's, and the Globe and Mail. Her most recent mystery novel, Melt, is the second in the Lotus Detective Agency series. It's about what happens when three yogis with a penchant for solving crime are asked to help a 17-year-old boy who is facing life in prison for a crime that he didn't commit. donalee has also taught communications and writing related courses at several universities, as well as for all levels of government, the private sector, nonprofits in Canada and the United States. donalee has also written two nonfiction books, one about effective communications and another about organizational policy. So I don't know when you sleep, donalee, but I guess you do sometimes. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I like to encourage aspiring writers and others who maybe have that manuscript hidden in a drawer somewhere and don't quite know what to do with it, or maybe afraid to do anything with it. I like to encourage them just to take the plunge, no matter what age he or she might be. So let's say you just want to be a freelance writer, you just want to see your name in print. How does somebody get involved with that these days in this age of both online and print publications?
The wonderful news is that the online world has a voracious appetite for content. So it's almost a daily requirement for many publications, for many sites, which means they need to have access to people who can provide them with content. So that's the good news. There is opportunity out there and it is knocking. The not so good news is that the speed with which you may have to deliver can be quite daunting. The demands on you as a writer to turn information around and articles around can be quite significant. There's also a real desire, I think, to see your name out there online. And as a result, I think there are many, many people who are contributing to publications looking to see their name in print, but not necessarily make money for that. So for people looking to get paid for this and to get paid a reasonable amount of money, that can be very difficult in an online world. On the print side, there are still many reputable publications out there, but to be honest, they're getting fewer and further between, and they're getting smaller and smaller all the time. That
And
was encouraging, wasn't
well, it really behooves the writer though to do his or her research as well into that publication or that online news source. You've got to find out how often news does come out on it, and what they expect to receive from you when you apply for something. So you don't go in blind and write something to info@globeandmail.ca and expect to even get a response. You've got to do some background work, right?
it? Many publications have on their website a page for contributors. And that will often tell you contributors are everything from people who want to write a letter to the editor to sharing a funny story with Reader's Digest to actually writing a journalistic article. And if you can find that page, if it exists on the publication you're looking at, that's a great guide as to what they pay, what they want, and how to get in touch with them, because that's often the difficult thing. The contact email at the end on the contact page is usually very unhelpful. So I think you're right, you need to do some homework first. And one of the things that will drive editors to want to publish new writers is you live in a place that they don't have anybody and you can report on things happening in your neck of the woods. You have a particular expertise that they would really like to take advantage of, or you pitch ideas that are intriguing, interesting, and show that you understand what they're looking for their readers. So there's lots of ways in, but they're not necessarily going to be fast ways in or easy ways in.
Right, right. I remember when I first started doing some travel writing many years ago. Uh, I read a book called The Travel Writer's Handbook by a woman by the name of Louise Zobel, and she was saying that you've got to realize that people don't really want to know about what you had for breakfast that day in the travel section, but they might be really, really keen on where you live in your backyard. You don't need to go to Bermuda or Albania to write a travel story. Write about what you know best, especially when you're starting out. And in our case, it's Nova Scotia and the Maritime provinces, and more broadly, Canada. Um, how do you remember when you first pitched an article to a magazine or a periodical?
And it was interesting because I started writing articles when I was in university, and so I started writing for the Dal Gazette. And one day we were in the newsroom, and one of the student reporters walked in and said, "Hey, there's a new magazine, and they're paying, I don't know, 10 or 15 cents a word." And I said, "What do you mean they're paying? Like magazines pay?" This was just terrific news. But you're right, it was in my backyard, and there is often a greater sense of commitment to publishing people in your neck of the woods. The other thing that was really helpful for me starting out was that 90% easily of the publications that I would write for were based in Toronto, maybe BC or Montreal, and they had no one on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote for the Lawyers Weekly for years, for the Medical Post for years, publications that just needed to have a body here, someone to keep an eye on things, to feed them ideas, and when stories broke, to follow up. So there is that as well. Especially in Canada, we do feel an obligation to be coast to coast.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Um, but so how would you initially approach the editor? I guess first with an idea for a story, or some people might have the story already written, and you can explain what that means in a moment. But um, what if the editor or publisher comes back with, oh, that's great, we love it. I think we'd like to run that in our autumn issue, but we don't pay. Are you interested? Then what do you do? Or anything?
Yeah, and that's a great question. That takes us back to almost where we started, Bruce, which is do whatever homework you can do up front so you're not surprised when you get that email, or someone who's written for them and you knew that they didn't pay, or that they only paid 10 cents a word or some small amount. But I think you have to decide up front what's most important to kind of build a body of work for which you are prepared perhaps not to get paid much or anything at all, or know that writers should be valued, and that means that you should be compensated in some way or another.
Right. I Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's a personal decision. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. And I know for many people, breaking into certain publications or certain markets is very important to them. And so they're willing to take less money or no money to have that credibility.
Right. And it used to be, at least in my experience with the Travel Media Association of Canada, our guidelines for membership, we had to prove every 2 years with receipts what we were paid by the last, I don't know, 8 to 10 articles that were out in the past couple of years. That way, the idea was we're serious about this
Yeah.
business. We're not just doing it as a hobby. I think rules and regulations have changed somewhat over the years so that because there's so many more writers out there that are calling themselves influencers and bloggers and all the rest. But can a writers association, for example, help an aspiring writer even before that person has anything published?
Well, I think tremendously. I think most of the writing organizations that I know, they will put you in touch with people that work in this field that you can chat to, that you can ask questions of. Many of them have existing materials that will help you get started. If you've got questions about fees and payments, a lot of those organizations have a chart that will give you a sense of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Many of them also have reading services. So for usually a small but reasonable fee, someone in your area will take a look at something you've written and give you some very constructive feedback. Because, of course, we're talking about the desire to break in, the tools you need to get your name before an editor and get an assignment. But then you also have to know that you're going to be able to do the kind of writing that they want. And as you and I know, Bruce, it's a very different kind of writing from writing a short story or writing a poem or writing a book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, and looking at your background and even what I did, I found it easier to start to write my first book of fiction, because of the experience with having written articles and op-eds and stories and press releases and God knows what before attempting a novel. That's not to say it can't be done for a first-time self-published author, but um, that's a good segue to get into your books right now, because you do have a new one out, and I'm going to share the screen right now with uh, what we see here is the Lotus Detective Series, Book One. I'm scrolling down the page so people can see Melt, which is Book Two. And I'm assuming there will be a trilogy, Donnelly, or
I would think so, Bruce. I have a rough plot, but to be honest, I'm also wondering, and freelancers do this all the time. I'm also wondering if there's a new challenge somewhere that I might like to try to dip my toe in some new waters. I don't know yet. I have a contract to write a book for my publisher, which does not have anything to do with this series. So that's what I'm in the middle of now. So kind of what we're talking about would be the book after that, and it's not on the radar yet.
I see. Okay. I have noticed too, though, that if people do go on your website and go to your up where the books tab is at the top, they can look at your fiction and your nonfiction books. They're all listed, and very easily too, you can order directly from the website by just clicking a button there. So that's handy to have. And you've also done a lot of coaching over the years with writers and authors and continue to do so. So tell me a little bit more about that. And I'm going to try to bring up the screen that shows that from your website.
Well, and this is what you talk to with your listeners, Bruce, is the fact that independent writers are very savvy about the publications that they produce. And I think initially, especially during COVID, when people had time on their hands, there was this desire to get things down as quickly as we could because we didn't know how much time we'd have. And my publisher contends that that led to a lot of books that were good books, but just not as good as they could have been or should have been. And I think independent published writers have learned that just like traditionally published writers, we need the editor. And the editor is developmental from a high level, and it's hands-on in the weeds from copy editing and line editing, right through to helping us know if the first page is going to work, right? We look at nothing but the first page, for example, or we coach people through the thinking of the book. I just had a session with a fellow who's got an absolutely wonderful thriller, but he stumbled on a couple of plot lines. And sometimes you need someone who understands the genre, but also the working through of those. So my services and many others are kind of wide open to meet your needs.
Hmm.
But I don't think that people should ever feel that it is a reflection of their ability as a writer, because one of the things that I just embrace is an editor. I mean, a good editor is a fabulous thing, and all of us need our work edited and reviewed and kind of thought about and critiqued. And in that vein, one of the things that might be helpful for new writers are contests for unpublished manuscripts where you will get judges' comments back, because
Hmm.
I find those very valuable. And often you'll get them from three judges. So you get this first kind of direct response to your writing, and it can let you know where you're strong and where you might like to improve.
Right. I agree with that. With the sort of the caveat, maybe keep a real close eye on the type of contests that you're applying to. There's tons and tons of them out there. If you live in Canada and work in Canada, might be best to check on the Canadian ones first, because again, when you think of the much larger population in the States, that means a lot more applicants going to.
And sadly, I think it also means that some of them are not necessarily in it to help the writer as much as they are in it to make money. So I would start with the writers' associations in each province. So in
Yeah.
our province, in Nova Scotia, the Writers' Federation of Nova Scotia has an annual contest. The Crime Writers of Canada, if you write mysteries and crime, fiction or nonfiction, they have an annual contest and they have an unpublished category. But these are reputable organizations. They will charge a fee, but it is not an extravagant fee, and you will get that professional feedback, which is invaluable.
Right. And speaking of the Writers Federation of Nova Scotia, even for people who aren't members, and their membership fees are very reasonable. But say if you're not a member, you can still go on the website of the WFNS and click on services, and it just shows you the huge amount of things available to people. They're very supportive of writers, and again, not just in Nova Scotia, but
Absolutely.
anywhere in Canada. Donalee, we could go on for probably an hour or two, and I'd love to, but we'll have to have a good strong cup of coffee sometime soon. But thank you so much for being here today, and people will see your website at the bottom of the page, and I encourage people to check out Donnelly's work and check out her services. And she's a lovely, wonderful, and very, very talented person to deal with. So thanks again, Donnelly.
Thanks for having me, and good luck to everyone.
Yes, for sure. And just stay on the line a second, Donnelly, and I'll say goodbye to everyone else. Thanks for joining me, folks, and we'll see you next time on Go Right Ahead.